In the last few weeks, I received over and over the same question, which was, should I use n8n or Claude Code, or should I ditch both tools and directly use OpenClaw? And in general, is it still worth learning n8n in 2026? And I can completely understand that question because there's a lot of content like n8n versus Claude Code. You should ditch n8n, stop learning it. So a lot of videos that tell you that you shouldn't use it anymore, or replace it directly with OpenClaw, Claude Code, or vibe code something with anti-gravity together with Claude Code. But the problem is that most of them don't understand that these tools are used for different use cases. So first of all, n8n is an orchestration tool and Claude Code is an agentic coding assistant. They do both completely different things. And I highly recommend to take your time when you do the decision between n8n or Claude Code for a specific use case, because if you do it wrongly, then most likely you will either end up over-engineering something that could be a simple trigger with maybe like 5 nodes, or you're trying to create a really complex workflow directly in n8n, which will become definitely a nightmare as soon as you have to maintain it. And during this video, I will exactly show you where I use n8n and where I also use Claude Code, and I will also give you kind of a guideline which will help you to decide which tool might be the best fit for your use case. And before we have a look into the framework, let's quickly talk about what n8n actually is and also Claude Code. And for that, let's have a look first into an n8n workflow. The most important concept is that n8n is an orchestration tool, so an automation platform where you can build things by using drag and drop. So you can add a trigger, schedule a trigger, you can also add a webhook. So it's first of all a visual tool, and primarily built for building automations. Of course, you can also use AI, but the core capabilities of n8n are definitely that you have a lot of nodes. As an example, let's say you want to work with Google Sheets, or for instance, slides, let's say BigQuery. There are like a lot of different nodes that already do kind of the complex work for you because you can simply use them, authenticate once, and then you have directly access to them. So it's definitely a really convenient and nice way to use different nodes from different services and build an automation really fast without getting comfortable with all the different REST APIs, authentication concepts. And apart from that, there are a lot of nodes that also make it easy for beginners. So first of all, there's a code node in case you want to do something complex, but we have nodes for retrieving data. We can use variables. We have the Google Sheet nodes. We can trigger other workflows, so we can chain different workflows in a complete system. And in case there's not a specific node for your service, then you can still use an HTTP node and then use, for instance, header auth or auth2 or whatever. So you're like really flexible. And next to all the nodes here, it's also really important to mention that first of all, you can self-host n8n. So in case you're working with confidential data, then you can make sure that the data stays on your server, which is definitely a plus point for n8n. Apart from that, you have also features such as the executions, evaluations, you have the history. You can easily share your workflow with someone else, and it's also easy to understand because you're not looking at code, and instead you have like a really easy interface where it is, even for a beginner, easy to understand what happens, even if you don't know what exactly is happening in each node. By just looking at the workflow, you have kind of the idea what it is doing. And if you use only code, then for the next person, it will be quite hard to understand what is happening. The last thing I would like to mention is also really important. That is the fact that you can schedule every single workflow by using a schedule trigger in a really nice and also intuitive way. So you can simply schedule something by using a dropdown. Let's say you want to run a workflow every midnight or every hour, every week. So you're like really flexible, and you don't have to take care of setting the cron job directly in a server because n8n takes already care of that. And now let's have a look into Claude Code. And for that, I have opened Visual Studio Code because on the left we have the Explorer that you can also see some folders and files. And of course, we have to open up the terminal because Claude Code is a CLI. And for that, I can simply type in Claude. And now I have already a Claude Code session where I could use it, for instance, for generating Python code, invoking a specific skill. As an example, I have the plugins like superpowers, I have user skills, but I have also based on the domain. So as you can see, I have a domain like infographics, lead magnets, newsletter, school, social media, thumbnails, and so forth. And if I want to execute a specific skill, let's say I go directly into the folder, let's say I want to write a newsletter, then I can open Claude Code directly in that specific domain. And again, check for the skills. And here we can see I've also project skills, which would be draft newsletter. So as you can see, it's not a chatbot. It's more kind of an agentic coding and also in general assistant that can help you really, really good in daily tasks. And of course, also if you want to generate code, but as you can see, it's not an automation tool. I don't have anything set up for logging, deploying it, allocating resource, for instance, somewhere on the cloud or on my home server. You really start from scratch when developing something. Before we have a look into a few n8n workflows, but also Claude Code skills that I am using regularly, let's have a quick look into the decision framework, which will help you to decide on when you should use n8n or where it might make more sense to use Claude Code. And for that, we will start with the left side. So when should you use n8n? First of all, if you need something that needs to be deterministic, so let's say you have a automation that needs to run on a daily schedule, let's say 7 a.m., and you want to analyze emails or summarize it, then most likely it is better to just do it in n8n because this could be a really simple automation and you can bring that to production quite fast because you don't have to take care of the deployment, you don't have to secure safely the credentials, you don't have to write the code, you don't have to figure out the REST API from, let's say, OpenAI or Anthropic. So in this case, using Claude Code for generating the code will be definitely over-engineering. Another case where I think it is definitely better to use n8n is that if you just use, for instance, a simple call to a large language model because you want to summarize something, extract specific information from a specific content piece, and you also want to use that for an automation because it helps you to get rid of repetitive tasks, then n8n will be definitely the better tool because there are a lot of nodes that help you to get the job done quickly. And also in this case, using Claude Code for generating the complete system might be an overkill. The next point is regarding schedules and also external triggers. So let's say you want to trigger a workflow with a webhook, then you could do that also easily in n8n, and the complete infrastructure is already available. The same for schedules, so you don't have to get familiar with setting up a cron job. You can simply use the schedule trigger, configure it in a dropdown, and then publish the workflow. Next to that, there are also workflows that are purely data-driven, so you don't need any AI at all. I will also show you in a bit a workflow where exactly that is happening. And n8n is actually quite good in working with data, so you have a lot of nodes for parsing data, filtering data, getting data from other services, for instance from Supabase, BigQuery, or any other database. And building such an automation makes most of the time more sense in n8n because you can already benefit from the existing infrastructure. If you do that with Claude Code, then you have to take care of creating the database, deploying it somewhere, making sure that the performance is good enough, and of course you have to maintain all of these things. The next point is regarding high volume execution. So let's say you know that an automation needs to run a few thousand times per month. Then I would highly recommend to use n8n because they have already the infrastructure and you can also deploy it once for yourself if you decide to do the self-hosting way. There are also a lot of open source templates in case you want to use Redis or in general more workers to increase the performance. And if you self-host it, then you can also execute it quite often without paying per execution. And the last point is also really important. So data compliance, let's say you're working with confidential data, then it is really important that you don't take the data and then send it, for instance, to OpenAI or the servers from Anthropic. So in this case, the solution would be to use n8n and then also self-host the complete infrastructure, which you could theoretically also do by using Claude Code, and then you generate all the code. But if you're not familiar with it and you don't have a coding background, then I wouldn't recommend to do it. So let's come to the part when you should use Claude Code. And I just picked 3 points because for Claude Code, there are a lot of use cases from building your own application, creating your own skills with your domain knowledge, creating custom integrations. So there are a lot of things you can do. And in my opinion, the biggest strength of Claude Code is that first of all, you can always add your context. So you have a Claude MD file. You can also add a memory file, skills, and so on. So you can really customize it and you can use it in a conversational way. So if you have an n8n workflow, then it will be executed and then you will have a result, but you cannot ask any follow-up questions. So in this case, Claude Code is definitely better. And apart from that, I'm also using Claude Code a lot for content creation, research, writing content for my websites. And I have to say that I also did a lot of workflows for content creation, also content optimization in n8n, but Claude Code is way better in doing that because you can always ask a follow-up question. You can iterate really quickly on your skill file, which brings me also to the next point. So if you know that you will work frequently on the system and you want to extend it, remove something, customize it, then I would highly recommend to go with Claude Code. And of course, it's also worth mentioning that you can also use Claude Code for generating JSON files, which will be then n8n workflows. There are also a lot of Claude Code skills and MCP servers, and I've tried them. They are, I would say, okay-ish. So for really simple things, it works well. But as soon as you want to create a complex system, then you burn through all your tokens, and all of these workflows are usually really buggy, which means if you're not comfortable with n8n, then debugging the workflow that was generated by Claude Code can be quite. So let's have a look into a few n8n workflows. And for instance, right now we are looking at a workflow that I am using for indexing sites from my website. So it's really deterministic. I have the requirements that I need to call an API, so I can simply use an HTTP node. And apart from that, it's really important that this workflow runs on a schedule. And in this example, it does not involve any AI. It's pure data-driven and also driven by the APIs that I used. And in this case, I could also use Claude Code and generate a few Python files for sending data to the Google Search Console API. But once I have the files, then I still have to take care of setting up the cron jobs, deploying it, making sure that the credentials are securely stored. And all of that would be, in my opinion, an overkill. So n8n does a job here. It's fine. No reason to migrate it. So I just leave it as it is, so it can run in the background, and I don't have to deal with it anymore. And another workflow that's also completely data-driven is the SEO performance audit workflow. So it gets triggered by a webhook, then it gets some data from my websites. Eventually, it will take care of executing SQL queries for retrieving data from BigQuery. And afterwards, these code nodes here take care of generating dynamic HTML code, which will be then sent back. And as an example, this is how it looks like. So it's just an HTML file where I have that is directly coming from BigQuery, so the performance data from my website. And of course, I could also go ahead and use Claude Code and then create the backend for retrieving the data, create the front end, use React, deploy it on a server, maybe add some authentication, firewall, security, infrastructure. So there are a lot of things I have to do if I want to do the same with Claude Code. So in this case, I also don't migrate anything. I just leave it as it is because it does the job and it is also really cost effective. Another great use case for n8n is a rank tracker. So in this case, the requirement is to call an API, save the data somewhere, and it also needs to be run on a schedule. And all of that is given by n8n itself. And as you can see, it's really easy, just a few nodes. And of course, you could also use Claude Code and then, for instance, generate a Python file, call the API to retrieve the SERP results and save it somewhere. But I would definitely lose some time when it comes to deploying it and also maintaining it. So really similar to the other workflows. The last workflow I want to share is the AI overview backlink scraper. So it's really simple. It just takes data from a Google spreadsheet, checks for specific prompts, the AI overviews, parses the data, and then eventually saves all the AI answers, including all the sites that were used for generating the answer. And such a workflow is created in like 10-15 minutes if you know how to do it. And publishing it is quite easy. So just click on publish and then it's already done and it will run on the schedule that you configured here. And this is also a great example where Claude Code would be definitely an overkill because you might be able to create really fast this logic here. But again, if you have to deploy it somewhere, maintain it, or maybe do a handover for a colleague, then n8n will be the better choice. And now let me show you when I use Claude Code. And let's start really simple with all the skills that I have. So I can show you first of all the skills in the different domains. So I have like a skill for generating infographics. That is also the skill that was used for generating these images here. Then I have also a skill for writing newsletters, generating thumbnails, or also, for instance, for publishing content directly to my social media accounts, for instance, for Instagram. So as an example, the skills that are available in the social media domain. So you can also have a look into them. And for that, I have to open Claude Code and then list the skills. So as you can see, we have here Instagram carousel, post to Instagram, post to TikTok, and also start auto DM. And this is how it would look like. So this carousel was completely generated by AI and also published. And of course, if someone will comment it, then they will retrieve a auto DM. And all of that was generated in a conversational way with Claude Code. So I invoked a specific skill or just told it to generate a carousel for the specific topic, generate the images by using Nano 2, and eventually also use a third-party tool for making sure that we can also publish the content. And creating all these skills with Claude Code was quite easy. It took me just a few hours. But if I have to build something like that in n8n, it would be definitely possible, but it would be really complex. And as I said, if something does not look good, then I cannot ask a simple follow-up question compared to doing it in Claude Code. So I can simply go ahead into the session and then, let's say, invoke the skill for creating the carousel. And then it will ask me for a topic. Then I will talk about the topic. Then there will be some back and forth until we agree on something that is good enough for posting. Afterwards, I instruct Claude Code to generate the images. So this is kind of a workflow where a human in the loop is required. So I have to check always, what did Claude do? Is it good enough? And then proceed with the next step. To give you another example where I use Claude Code quite heavily, it is in my agentic SEO system. So as an example, here I do have skills for analyzing data from the Google Search Console, crawling a site, getting data from Google Analytics, merging the data to get more insights in general, creating new content, including featured images, internal linking, proper infographics, plots, and so forth. And all of that is done in a conversational way with Claude Code. Because if I have to create such a system with n8n, then it would most likely take weeks or even months. And maintaining it would be also quite hard. And apart from that, I don't have to schedule anything here. Of course, I could do that, but most likely for the majority of the users, it is fine enough to use it in a conversational way without the requirement of deploying the code somewhere in order to run it in an automated way. The last thing I want to show you where I use heavily Claude Code is for building custom applications. So as an example, I've created my own application for analyzing my competitors. So I see exactly what kind of content are they publishing. I can analyze the comments. If I want to, I can also set a bookmark. I have an overview of all my competitors and if they are performing really well. And if they have any content that might be viral, I can use that system for planning content. I have also a creation setup. So if I want to create a new thumbnail, then I have also some systems here. I have a thumbnail collection and I have also a monitoring part. So for analyzing the channel growth of my own YouTube account, but also for my competitors, I am monitoring different school communities, subreddits, GitHub repositories, specific pages, newsletters. So all of that here is completely generated by Claude Code. And this would be also a use case where it makes only sense to use Claude Code for generating something, because n8n would not be the right tool since it is an automation tool. And I would also not recommend to use n8n as a backend for your application. Which brings me also to the last part of this video, which is the basic questions such as, should I still learn n8n? And in my opinion, yes, it is still worth learning n8n, because even if there's at some point another automation tool, they will be quite similar. And if you are comfortable with n8n, then it will be easier for you to also learn working with another automation tool. Apart from that, I also showed you workflows that are really simple and where Claude Code would be an overkill. First of all, because you have to pay for the tokens and also take care of deploying everything. So you don't have to become a pro in using n8n. But if you know the basics, and of course you can also use Claude Code, for instance, for generating JavaScript code, I also do the same. Then you can still build really valuable automations. And if you self-host n8n, then it is also a really cost-effective solution. The next question was, does it still make sense to build workflows in n8n when Claude Code exists? Definitely. So you should still leverage automation tools such as n8n or any other orchestration tool that does the job for you. And I also received quite often the question, is it still possible to sell n8n workflows? And yes, if you sell an n8n workflow, so the business does not care if you have Python code, JavaScript code, if you use Make, Zapier, or n8n. Most of the time, the only thing that matters is the result. So do they save time? Are they able to get rid of an expensive subscription for a specific tool? Will they be able to maintain it at some point by themselves? So in a nutshell, building and also selling workflows, doesn't matter, as I said, if it is n8n or any other tool, is still possible. But don't expect to sell like for 10K any workflow where you just put 5 nodes together and you just called, for instance, a large language model from OpenAI. That is not realistic. But the business model, creating automations for businesses, is still working. And also if n8n is not that hyped anymore. That's it already regarding this video. In case you do have any questions or you want to have a deep dive into a specific topic, then let me know and we will hear each other in the next video.